Guys, I am halfway through Wind and Truth and there is so much here to unpack. We are getting all sorts of revelations about the Cosmere, about Roshar's past. So I thought this was a good place, 50% of the way through the book, to take stock of some of what we've learned. And as I go through it, I'm going to make some predictions about what we're going to see in the second half of Wind and Truth, which is pretty dangerous because I feel like I could be proved wrong immediately. And if you have any theories, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. But let's get started. This video will include spoilers. If it isn't clear already, it will include spoilers for the first half of Wind and Truth. So that's up through the end of day 5, which, by the way, I'm reading Wind and Truth on a Kindle, and it's exactly 50% of the book. So you've been warned. Let's get into it. The first big revelation that I want to talk about is what we learn about the wind, stone, and the night. Basically, the 3 ancient, maybe original spren of Roshar, maybe the original inhabitants on this planet. And at one point, what we learn, and Siltalk tells us to Kaladin, is that the wind, the stone, and the night, each capitalized, arrived before the humans did on Roshar, and seemingly before even the singers. So they actually might have been the original inhabitants of Roshar, created potentially by Adonalsium, the one god. These spren are the originators from which some of the most powerful forces on Roshar came from. And specifically, the sibling says, and I'll put this quote up as well, but the sibling says, "The Night Watcher came from the night, as the Stormfather came from the wind. I, the sibling, was formed from the stone, which was a sibling of wind and night." So the Night Watcher, the Stormfather, and the sibling themselves are all essentially products of the original spren of Roshar, the wind, the stones, and the night. So for me, the big question is, what happened to these 3 original spren? And what we see is, in the first half at least, we see and we hear of the wind speaking to multiple characters on the book, although in a severely weakened state than what it seems like she was in the past. And I kind of take some of what the wind is saying as face value, that she's trying to set up some sort of resistance or some sort of way to avoid whatever cataclysm is coming our way. But I think the bigger question is what happened to the stones and what happened to the night. So my initial thought when I was reading some of the portions was that the stones are speaking to Venli. And specifically in it, I'm just going to pull this up. Specifically, the stones were shown in Rhythm of War and then here as singing with Venli. And the book describes the stones didn't think about tomorrow, let the wind worry about that, the stones could enjoy the past. But I actually, as I thought about it a little bit more, one of the things that I noticed is that in that portion where Venli is speaking or singing with the stones, it's not capitalized in the way that the wind is, which to me makes me think that the stones that she's singing with are, yes, maybe a portion of the stones capitalized, the original spren, but that we haven't actually seen the stones yet. And so my prediction for the second half of Wind and Truth, or maybe the next 5 books of the second set of the series, is that we're going to see and learn a little bit more about the quote-unquote stones. And then we actually know almost nothing about the night. The most that I could find in Wind and Truth is, and tell me if you found more in the comments below or you have a little bit more sense of where this might go, but the most that I could find was the sibling saying, quote unquote, "The night left. Few loved her or even spoke of her, and it seems Mother replaced her," with essentially the Night Watcher, and Mother being cultivation. So the night left, and I have no idea what that could mean. So I'm excited to see where it might go. And side note, this entire discussion on the spren makes me think of Syl repeatedly telling Kaladin everything has a spren, which, does that mean the planet of Roshar has a spren? Is there a sea spren? There's so many different ways or directions that this could go. And I think this is where Axes the Collector, he has an interlude in the first half of Wind and Truth as well, where he's like, it's kind of a silly moment, but he's hunting for ostensibly the spren of, like a pain spren of drawn to the pain of men who have like struck their finger with a hammer. But his work is so important, and he must have some crazy knowledge about the kinds of powerful spren out there, like maybe a Roshar spren that we don't even know about just yet, and that may have a huge role in shaping the balance of power on Roshar. The second major revelation throughout the first half of this book, I feel like, has revolved around the Shattered Plains, which is shaping up to be the very center of whatever conflict is coming our way. And I think the big question for me is what on earth, why are the Shattered Plains so important, and what on earth is hidden there or resides there? And I think, this is total spoilers, but I think this is going to be, we're going to find out in the second half of the book that there is a Dawn Shard hidden somewhere on the Shattered Plains. So hear me out. So number one is that Odium cares so much about the Shattered Plains. What we see him do in Wind and Truth is, one, he unleashes an unmade, Diagonarthus, the last of basically the unmade that we know, to try to assault the Shattered Plains. He charges El, or Elodie, who is one of the singers that we see in one of our flashbacks in the spiritual realm, to quote-unquote travel to the Hornita Peaks, use her talents to take the garrison at Peaks, and then claim the Shattered Plains in my name. And in that, El asks all the same questions I feel like we're asking, which is, why is Odium so interested in the Shattered Plains? And how does he know there's enough power to connect whatever is there at Shattered Plains to the Hornita Peaks, which is where there's a perpendicularity? And the answer in my mind can only be something that can command a crazy amount of investiture and power. The second piece of evidence why this source of investiture or power could originate in part from a Dawn Shard is around what we learn when Venli travels to the Shattered Plains and learns a little bit more about the Chasm Fiends. And specifically as readers, and as Venli herself, what we learn is that Chasm Fiends are required to travel into the Shattered Plains to mature into adulthood, to basically undertake that final transformation. And for me, that was a little bit reminiscent of the way that Risen took Churi Churi, the Larkin, to Aimea, in order for her ostensibly to like try to make her feel better because she was unwell, the Larkin was unwell, but essentially to enable her to take kind of the next step in her maturity or her adulthood. And we learn in Dawn Shard that there is a Dawn Shard hidden in Aimea. The Shattered Plains are also connected to Aimea because of what the stones tell Venli. And what they tell her is that singers and then humans with a vaguely blue tint to their skin had built a nation on the Shattered Plains using the power of their surges. And humans with a vaguely blue tint is almost certainly referring to Aimeans. And so to me, Odium caring so much about finding whatever is on the plains, the Chasm Fiends' requirement to travel to the plains to mature in adulthood, and the seeming similarity between the Shattered Plains and Aimea all point to the fact that there is one of the 4 Dawn Shards on the plains. And then Honor destroyed the Shattered Plains, which is crazy. Honor is the one that shattered the plains. And the same time that he did that is the Aharietiam. Tell me if I pronounced that correctly in the comments. But the same time, essentially, as the heralds abandon their oaths. So the very first scene that we see in Way of Kings. So I'm not quite sure what to make of the fact that these events, Honor's destruction of Shattered Plains and the heralds abandoning their oaths, happened at the same time. My working theory right now is that that Honor destroyed the plains in order, as like a last-ditch effort, to try to protect whatever was hidden there, the Dawn Shard, after the heralds abandoned their duty to do so. So he was doing it as a one last effort, and that potentially destroyed him in the future. So I can't wait to read the second half, see which of the theories that I feel like are coalescing in my head actually pan out, which were way off. But I imagine that we're going to be teasing out threads throughout the course of this series for many years to come. So stick with me. I hope to have the next video posted as I make my way through Wind and Truth. So hopefully next week. Thanks, everyone.